like to call this meeting to order. We are starting with the tax rate hearing. A public hearing will be held prior to the regular Board of Education meeting commencing at 6 p.m. on September 22nd, 2025 at 11287 Manchester Road. At that time, citizens may be heard on the proposed property tax rates to be set by the Board of Education of the Kirkwood R7 district. The tax rates are set to produce the revenues that the budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025 indicates are required from the property tax. Mr. Cook.
Am I on? I'm on now. Okay. Okay, we're good to go. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening around the tax rates. I was comparing it earlier to the scene from Apollo 13 where they have to do the firing, right? And they have to keep Earth in the window. And during the whole process, it's going around. But at the end, they end with Earth in the window. So at the end, we end up with our tax rates. So it's not always been pretty to get to this point, but new process for me. But I appreciate the help and the patience that's gone along with that, and had a lot of support in a lot of ways to get it done. So a little bit of repetitiveness from what we heard in the work session, but just again, want to kind of outline the process and then go through our final assessed values and recoupment rates and tax rates as recommended by the state auditor's office for this year. So again, just a little bit of background on the tax rate setting. It's approved annually in September here in St. Louis County. Final AV numbers were posted on September 12th. We received our new construction numbers on the 15th. And so as expected, you're going to see in a few slides that our AV numbers did go down just a bit, slightly, except for personal property, which went up a little bit from what we had in our previous presentation. So we got our final numbers back from the state auditor's office at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon. Gave me a chance to spend a chunk of Saturday working through that and being ready for this evening. So, but grateful for the chance to be done with it tonight as well. So, as you know, the Hancock Amendment is going to limit the amount of revenue that districts are able to achieve. On the next slide, it kind of shows a little more detail there. You're able to raise your increase or achieve the increase from reassessment equal to the lowest of those metrics. Our assessed valuation increase ended up just a little over 15% of an increase. So a little bit less, but still historically high increases this year. CPI was at 2.9% statewide, and then the maximum 5%. So we're governed by the CPI increase of 2.9% for this year. We're allowed, of course, to count all the revenue that comes from new construction and new property there, a little over 19 million in that. So again, just to point out, these are 2024 rates, and that'll obviously change in the coming days and weeks, but the far right column there shows what the impact is on a $420,000 home on the tax bill that you see there. And I think the big takeaway for us as a school district and as a board is that 55.81% of personal property or of property taxes is coming back to the school district. So just to be cognizant of the fact that it is such an important piece of what we do, but it also on those tax bills sort of disproportionately shows how much the school district gets back in that. And so I think that when hard feelings exist over property tax, it's somewhat around this idea of how much of it goes to the school district. So again, more than 55% of all that residential property tax goes to KSD. Again, 85% of our budget is coming from local revenue sources. That includes Proposition C, which is considered local revenue. Wanted to take a minute again, and we did this during the work session, but just thinking through the coming weeks and months in the state of Missouri as we debate the idea of property tax reform. And they had a special session at Jefferson City in the last couple of weeks, and property tax reform came up again. They finally stopped the discussion and decided to table that to be determined in January when they reconvene. So we know that it's going to be a top issue there, and we can relate to that and understand why that would be a hot button issue for a lot of folks. Some numbers to keep in mind as we head into legislative season around property taxes. Missouri ranks 50th in the nation in the percentage of funding that originates from the state level. So when we think about the piece of pie that we get to offer education to our students, the percentage of state revenue that comes from the state level is the lowest in the nation. The state is picking up the lowest amount of the tab of any other state in the country. Missouri ranks 5th in the nation in the support that comes from local property taxes. So local taxpayers are 5th in the nation in supporting public education in Missouri. The state of Missouri is 50th. Those are important numbers, I think, to keep in mind. On average, the state of Missouri funds 28% of a school's funding. It's way lower for us. We're at 13% that comes from the state. So if we think about the frustration that our local taxpayers are feeling, I think we can relate and sort of sympathize with that because they are footing the bill for public education in the state of Missouri. If taxpayers need a break, I think it's time that we send the message that it's up to the state to uphold their end of the bargain. I think we can give local taxpayers a break if the state's willing to step in and pick up their end of the bargain. I think to reduce the contribution of local taxpayers without a corresponding increase in commitment from the state legislature will be devastating, and not just to school districts, but to fire districts and library districts and all of those who are impacted by property taxes. So as we head into that season, I think it's a good time to think of that imbalance that exists in our state, and it's really the perfect time for us to get engaged on that discussion because a new formula is being discussed. And if we are going to fix the contribution that comes from the state, it's going to come out of that discussion of the formula rewrite. And they've broken up that group into several subgroups, and just encourage you all to follow that, and I'm going to follow that. Dr. Rumpus will follow that, and we'll do the best we can to keep you informed. But there's big discussions in the offing for districts like us as they head into that particular time. So we need to pay close attention to those things, and I do think that we want to stress the discrepancy between what the local taxpayers are asked to contribute versus what the state of Missouri is contributing. I think it's important. A slide that you didn't see in the previous work session is this impact of fund balances over time that comes from this year's budget. We're adding roughly $300,000. That's a conservative approach here to the fund balance this year. If you multiply that out over time, that multiplies out to a $3 million impact over the extent of this 2033-34, the last year on this table. So we finished last year with $41.6 million in our fund balance, and we would expect to increase that this year. I'm sorry, we finished that 41.4, and we would go up to 46.1 if you see that. So it is a little confusing, I think, when you think about the impact of fund balances. As you generate new revenue, there's also these corresponding expenses that come along with that, and so the new revenue that we're going to expect to receive this year won't all go towards fund balance savings and show up in that particular spot. So again, a very healthy position for the district to be in, and we are obviously in a reassessment year. We're realizing new revenue, and so that's going to impact that bottom line over time in a way that compounds on itself over time, if that makes sense. Okay, property assessed values. This is the final numbers that we got on that we got late last week. As we mentioned, residential AV dropped slightly by 19.4 million. So you see that $1,794,382,860 is the residential assessed value. Agriculture actually increased slightly from what we presented last time. Commercial fell by 30.9 million to $363 million, and then personal property came back up a little bit, rose by 4.8 million, but we're still below what we had for last year. So a change in reassessment of 14.53%. I believe that is correct. So as we look at that historical document that we brought out at the work session, so those numbers don't add up, right? Is that the right one from the previous slide? 15.46, I believe, is the correct number. I'm sorry if it's wrong on the previous sheet, but that is the increase from the prior year, and that's below what we had thought at the work session, but it's still historically high, the second highest increase that we've had during that time period that we look back to 1994. Okay, so digging into some of the hard numbers that we've gotten back from the state auditor's office, it's time to take a look at recoupment and those tax adjustments. So this is something Kirkwood Schools participated in for several years now, and we again sought guidance from the auditor's office to help us to calculate this rate. I had a good consultant help from Mike Ramey, and he and I worked through this, and then we worked in conjunction with the state auditor's office as well as we calculated recoupment. Again, just a brief recap of what that represents. As taxpayers appeal the assessment on their property, that can result in a lower valuation, meaning that we had set incorrect levies in past years as the Hancock Amendment applies. So I think you guys who have been around for a while can understand that process, and it's complicated but worthwhile. And we saw another strong year of recoupment availability to the district as a temporary levy. We're allowed this year in recoupment to reclaim a little over $1.3 million in recoupment taxes. So this comes from 2019, 2021, 2023, 2024. Our recoupment levy would be super low on the residential side. As you can see, the recommended levy there is 0.57, so super low impact on the residential side. A little bit more impact on the commercial side. There was a lot of recoupment available there from the State Tax Commission decision, so it's a 0.3337 recoupment rate that goes into our recommended tax rates tonight, should you choose to implement those. So in 2024, recoupment was $924,000. That drops off in 2025. So if we take the 1.3 million and subtract the 924,000, we get that projected increase of $377,000, a little over that, and new revenue. Again, assuming a 97% collection rate on that. So difficult process, I think worthwhile, and really recouping more revenue than maybe we had originally thought we might. So we would expect that to have a real positive impact on the district. So here are the recommended tax rate ceilings from the state auditor's office for our 2025 tax rates. You can see that 277.5 residential, 180.40 for agricultural, commercial 4.7386, and then personal property is at that same level that it's been at. So our blended recommended rate for the tax rate ceiling is 3.2550. On the second line is that debt service levy that's 27 cents that continues to be at that levy as we pay off Prop R and our commitments there. So that subtotal is on the third line. Then you add in the recoupment rates underneath that. That gets you the bottom row there of the recommended tax rates for approval for this evening. So the resolution would include not just the tax rate ceiling from the top line, debt service from that second line, recoupment from the fourth line to reach that total line there at the bottom. So the very bottom there, you can see the comparison in rates from 2024. So we still see an overall reduction there in our residential tax rates, even counting for recoupment, and the blended rate also going down, even counting for recoupment. So although we're seeing those recoupment rates higher than maybe what we expected, we're still seeing the tax burden is mitigated on our folks in the collective. So revenue projections are based on, we're entitled to be paid $76 million in local tax revenue, 76, 779, 767. If we use a 97% collection rate there, we would see that total of $75,751,035 in the first column on the left. So we budgeted, built the budget for 25-26 on a $74 million budget. So we're expecting to have a variance there of $1.5 million above what was budgeted. So we can see then on the far side what was achieved in 2024. In the bottom right, you can see the revenue that's coming out of new construction, revenue coming from assessment adjustment, the 2025 recoupment totals, all of those at a 97% collection rate. So that's the discrepancy from the previous slide. So you can see that we're expecting to achieve a fairly substantial increase in local revenue based on this year's rates from the state auditor. So if we still look though, so we transition from that into comparison of the residential tax rates of our local area districts, we can see that the projected residential tax rate for Kirkwood School District is going to drop below Parkway. Now, I think that to be realistic, they're all seeing the same increases in AV that we've achieved, and so we would expect a lot of these to roll back as they are having their meetings similar to what we're having tonight. So we may not be the lowest, but I think that we can expect to be, again, in the bottom 2 or 3 in the area as we compare ourselves to our neighbors. And so want to continue to say that the fiscal approach that Kirkwood School District has had has been able to achieve the lowest levy in the area, or one of the lowest levies in the area as we compare ourselves to our neighbors, as it's fallen even lower this year. Again, and this is a slide that we shared as well at the work session, but this will be looking back as far back as 1994, the lowest residential tax rate that we've had. So I think that is obviously a product of the CPI limitation and the Hancock Amendment and the huge growth in AV. It just rolls that levy back to a low level. And so hopefully that makes our patrons feel confident that the district is that the burden, the additional burden on them due to their assessed value increases is not collectively going to be too difficult. Hopefully that's the case. Here's the Prop R bond schedule, the payments. This is the same as what you saw at the work session as well. We have those 2 annual interest payments and the principal payment that takes place there. Our 27-cent levy is going to be adequate to continue to pay that. I think that's going to be something we evaluate again in the next couple of years as to whether that levy needs to remain at that level or if there's additional debt that the district takes on in that meantime as well. So that's a lot of information delivered relatively quickly, but the summary of the presentation, just to condense everything down into what the board is considering for this evening. The combination of the second largest increase in assessed values combined with a historically low tax rate governed by the 2.9% CPA leads us to ask for your approval of those levies as presented at the tax rate ceiling approved by the state auditor's office, in addition to the one-time recoupment rates for residential and commercial property as listed there below. So happy to take questions if I missed anything or misstated anything over the course of that presentation.
Ms. Pangborn? Ms. Andrews?
Hi, just a few quick ones. So
Okay.
in terms of the recoupment, we're receiving recoupment, lots of R's, all the way back from 2019.
Yes, so dating all the way back to 2019, and I think the 2019 list was mostly commercial
Okay.
folks who were asking for reductions in their rates. So sometimes it takes years to decide those things.
That's what I was kind of gonna ask, is like, do we have an understanding of, or a way to kind of figure out how much is out there for the recoupment?
For future
For the
years.
future.
I don't know of a way, because I think the only way is if you could somehow find out how many cases were pending at the State Tax Commission that were still ongoing. I think that's a good point. And,
Okay.
I don't think it's impossible to find that
Yeah,
out, but that
okay.
would be a good project for me.
Okay.
In my downtime
And
in
then
the coming
just
weeks.
the other thing that I think is always important, as you know, we're hearing that we have this recoupment funds, and then we also had some additional like surplus that we've got.
Yeah.
That wasn't in our budget. That oftentimes we have unfunded mandates put on us.
That's true, yeah.
And so it's a balancing act when, although we have increases, we also have to keep in mind that we have, at times significant unfunded mandates that then are what we have to pay for.
Right, and I think in the same vein as that is that the buildings that we have in our district that are of the age that they are, sometimes there are unexpected deferred maintenance issues that come along with that as well. And I think we're gonna see some of this revenue, even in our current year budget, going towards projects that were unexpected. And I think those unexpected costs, along with the unfunded mandates, we wouldn't want to leave the impression that we're flush with cash, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the point, that in any time that we talk about this, we also need to make sure that we're kind of,
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective, for sure. And I think too, just the consistent efforts that we make to try to keep our staff well compensated at the professional and support staff levels. And we're not competing against no one when it comes to that. So as those
Right.
raise in the area, then the revenue that we're able to generate goes towards keeping the very best teachers and keeping them
absolutely.
well compensated as well. So
Yep.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for that.
Oh, I'm on now. Just want to thank you so much for going through that and appreciate your acknowledgement of the role that local taxes pay and how that impacts the district's budget, especially as compared to what's contributed by the state. I also just want to reiterate that key point that I think you did a great job going into at our work session back on September 2nd, which is what you summarized here around, I know taxpayers will be feeling it because of
Yes.
that
Yeah.
second largest assessed value, as well as a 2.9% CPI. So really appreciate you creating that awareness, both at the work session and again tonight, so.
Yeah, and I think to your point, just some of the prescriptive nature of that,
Yes.
those revenues or those requirements that come along with that of, the board has the ability to set rates at what they want to set rates at, but these are the parameters under which our budget would function well.
Right.
And so that comes out of the state auditor's office to say, based on revenue and your past tax rate levy, this is the levy that you're allowed to have at this point.
Right.
And so the board, I think, always chooses to have the least amount of impact on local taxpayers while still being able to fund the budget that was built in last spring and heading into 2026. So that's a great point.
Thank you. I appreciate you putting a finer point on that for me. Thanks.
I just want to thank you and appreciate all the detail, all the information, a lot of numbers, but you help it make sense, so thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.